Okay everyone, guess what I'm making next? It's chewy yet soft, so good, and you can serve it with nearly everything or eat it with nearly every meal. Any guesses? It's homemade bread. I know you can't wait. Fresh bread is coming right up next on Cooking Made Easy with June, brought to you by Macy's, the happy shopping store in Spanish Fork. Hello everyone, this is June. I'm the Happy Thai Girl, and today on Cooking Made Easy with June, we're making homemade bread. So much history in this. I started making bread ever since I was like back in the 80s when I was in college, and I had a roommate who would make fresh bread for our roommates and for the whole week, and it was cheaper than going to buy bread, and it was so much better. So that's how it started. Then I started making it and evolving, and anyway, so then when I started having a family, I would just make fresh bread every week, all the time. I would make it and freeze it, and the kids just loved it. So they're a little spoiled. Anyways, so finally, just the other day, it's been like my kids are all grown, you know, but they're like, Mom, I need to learn how to make bread. I thought, oh my gosh, I have never done bread on the show. And I know why, because you know, it just takes a few steps. It's so easy, but it does take a few steps to rise and things like that. So anyway, so to plan it, but first, all you do is make dough. It's easy, you make dough, but the hard part is waiting and being patient while it rises. Okay, so all you do is start with about 12 cups. This is a classic white bread. Now in the past, I've decreased maybe a couple cups of flour, and I've added oatmeal, oat bran, so you can like play it up and do whatever you want, just to add a little extra fiber in it. But the classic white bread is the best, because you can also, in fact, another segment I've made was breadsticks, and it's the same recipe. However, I wanted to do this because we do a little bit differently with the rising. So you make a little well you start with about 11 to 12 cups. So measure loosely. You don't want too much flour because you can always add, but you cannot subtract. So start out with about 11 and a half to 12 cups. And so all I do is start out with really, really almost hot, warm temperature of the tap water. Now I don't measure, I don't like test the temperature, but if it's hot that I can handle it, then it's perfect. So this one is 4 cups, and we need 5 cups of water. So I'm pretty spot on when it comes to adding water. You don't want to add too much or too little. All right, there's that. And then we add the yeast. We just need 2 tablespoons of dry active yeast. It will say instant yeast. So 2 tablespoons of it. This batch makes about 4 very large loaves or 5 kind of medium to large loaf. 2 tablespoons of yeast and 2 tablespoons of salt. Any kind of salt. I always have one kind of salt on hand, is the sea salt or kosher salt sometimes. So 2 tablespoons of that. And then we just add a half cup of oil. Okay, let me get this one. Get a smaller cup to measure the half cup of oil. So a half cup of oil. Canola oil. If you have vegetable oil, that's fine too. I don't love to use olive oil. I know some people make bread with olive oil. However, olive oil, it has a distinct taste, and I don't love the way it makes it taste a little different, but maybe that's just me. But if that's all you have, then use olive oil and it'll work fine. And then what else do we need? Oh, a cup of sugar. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's so good. But it makes like 5 loaves, right? So a cup of sugar. And I know that's a little bit more because I use the wet ingredient. That's okay. And so I would let it sit and see how the yeast is just melting. I'm gonna let it sit for a second, like that. See, I'm gonna separate that. Let it sit, kind of let it dissolve a little bit. Okay, so it just takes a few seconds to do that. And then I'll talk about this. So also with bread, it's really, you can't really fail. People are afraid to use it, but the main thing is the temperature of your water. Just kind of make sure it's warm enough. And up and down a few degrees. It's not a big deal. And then you just make sure your yeast is active, and so you don't waste ingredients. But make sure that your yeast, is fresh, and you can use most of the yeast. I buy a big, huge pack, and it'll tell you an expiration date. I like to refrigerate my yeast once I've opened it, and that kind of stores it longer. And so just check your expiration date before you start making your bread, okay? So I think that's pretty good. And then I'm just going to start in the middle. I'm going to whisk to kind of get those ingredients together into a smooth little roux or whatever you want to call it. So you start in the middle like that. And I'm not stressed about anything on the sides or anything like that. So once you're getting that in kind of smooth like that, so you've got the main ingredients like the yeast and the salt together, you can actually go ahead and take out your whisk, because once you get thicker, it's harder to clean. That's what I do. And then you just take a spatula or a flat spoon or something like that, and you just start kind of doing this. Now, I'm so precise. However, there were days where because when my kids were younger, I would work part-time, and then I would get up in the morning, and then I would just make the dough really quick, and I've done it so many times, and then you just take maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then you let it rise about an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, the first rising. And so when I've done that, it just works out great, because then you just do whatever while it's rising, right? Okay. Now, some people have used the bread machine, or the mixer, and they have a dough hook where they knead. I've never used that because I always want to make a lot of loaves. Another thing is you don't have to make this full recipe, because it does make for very large loaves. You could cut it in half, and I've done that before. If you just want a couple loaves, but don't believe me, you're going to want all the loaves. Okay, so now we have that, and it's still sticky, but that's okay. I just want to have enough to start handling it. You could actually start kneading it inside the bowl like that with your hand. This is the fun part, right? You can have your kids help you with this. I don't know why. I've never really had my kids, they do other things. They make cookies, but they've never really helped me with bread. Yes, I get, because it takes to rise, and I just need to do it myself. It takes time to rise. So notice I added more flour in my hand so that it doesn't stick. So I have a little cup of flour in hand. Now see, you still have flour on the sides of the bowl. So I'm going to take this. Okay, now it's still sticky, but I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over into my countertop. So get all this little stuff in here. I'm not too picky about that, but okay. So now you start kneading it. So how you knead bread is you just fold it over and do this. Now see, you see the sticky parts? So I take a little sprinkle on the sticky parts, and then I just turn it over, and I just knead it like that. It's actually kind of relaxing to bake. I love to watch people knead bread. Especially if you're by yourself, you can just turn on the music and say, I'm going to make bread today. So I either put it on my hand and or on the sprinkle some on there. So supposedly, the recipe says, my old-fashioned recipe from, I don't even know who started this recipe, but I love this recipe. You're supposed to knead white bread for about 5 minutes. But if it depends on how fast you do it, like this. You want to knead it at the very least. It's like to where it's kind of smooth, and I'll show you it's not there yet. This is a good time where you can have your kids help you and just use your whole body. Kind of good exercise, right? Baking can be quite a bit of work. I love it. Especially when it comes out of the oven, and it's so worth it. So worth it. That's why I like to make a lot in a batch. I'm going to not waste all this flour. So I'm going to just move it over and knead it again. See, so I'm just gonna roll it around trying to get all my flour in. And it's getting a little sticky. Add a little bit more on my hand and on the dough. So the ingredients, oh, I forgot to talk about the flour. Evolving, I have used, if you don't have bread flour, I have used regular, just plain flour. And it's still good, but it doesn't come out as, the texture as, you know, how I like it, but it'll still be good. I used to think there was this one brand, this company in Utah started, it's called Grandma Sycamores or something. And when they first started making bread, and I thought, wow, that bread tastes nearly homemade. I loved it. But as they've gotten bigger, I'm not gonna lie, the bread has gotten more airy, more fakey, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just worth it to make your own bread. It's kind of sad because it used to taste so homemade. So if anybody from Grandma Sycamores hears me, you need to figure out how to go back to that old-fashioned way of you doing it, because it's not, doesn't taste as homemade as you claim anymore. To tell you the truth, maybe there's different owners. Okay, I'm nearly there. So you can see that it's getting more smooth. I'm kind of, once you start doing it, you're gonna be so proud of yourself because you're gonna see, oh my gosh, I did this. Look how easy this is. I just turn it over and knead with the back of your palm. All right, I'm gonna do it for a few minutes, but I'm gonna take a break while I do this off camera. And when we come back, well, I'm gonna show you. Okay, so this is not quite there. I'm gonna do it for a few more minutes, but what you do is you finish kneading it and you make it smooth. Now I've, in the past, I'll do a little bit more, but I've also taken the same bowl, leave it on my counter, and I just cover it like that, and it'll flow up and it'll be all over, but it's awesome. Or if you don't want, because so that way you have a, you know, your countertop, you don't have to clean it and start again because you're going to shape it. Or you could just put it in the bowl, and a lot of people say, oh, well, wash your bowl, grease it, and then, but I don't. I don't have time. So you can either put it in here and then put a plastic wrap around it and let it sit at room temperature for 2.5 hours, okay? So we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna have risen dough, and then we're gonna shape it. So come back. All right, welcome back. So I have here the dough that has been risen at least 2.5 to 3 hours. Now, I did this earlier in the day, and then I had my daughter put this in the fridge while I was at school, so it's a little bit cool, and so it's not as puffy. Normally it would be about this big, but it's fine. So it's been risen enough. I remember that, I can't remember who it was some French baker or something. They're saying that we Americans are impatient. We don't let things rise enough. So I guess if it over-rises, it'll be fine. It doesn't over-rise really. So there are days where I've forgotten about it and let it rise for 4 hours, and I'm like, whoa! Anyways, so I did that. So here is the risen dough, and you can just see how it's just like, see how it bounces back. It's awesome. So I'm gonna divide this dough into 4 portions approximately, and it doesn't have to be that pretty. I'm not great. I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna have to say this is not my forte, to make everything look perfectly pretty. But I have a good balance of looking pretty and tasting yummy, so I'm not as worried about that perfection in looking. So right, whatever. Can't even talk today. Okay, so while we were off camera, Chris was able to look up for me. Sean had a question about what's the difference between yeast, like instant yeast, the packaged yeast, or whatever, or the regular yeast. And so Chris looks it up, and basically, supposedly, the instant yeast is supposed to be for like bread machines. You can, my mother-in-law had a bread machine, and it was cool because you punch it in, and it just comes out to be baked bread. The only thing where I stopped using it, and I think it's not even popular as much anymore, is because you have to like spoon in, measure exactly, put the flour in and everything, and I'm like, oh, it drives me nuts. I just want to go, you know what I mean? So it's just not worth it for me. And it makes only 1 loaf. And I've heard of machines making 2 loaves, but but here with a bunch of people, I make a lot of loaves. So I just prefer this kind. I have not a machine to worry about, and it's awesome. Anyways, so that's for the bread machines, and they say that with the instant yeast that it doesn't need to be proofed, where you don't need to add water and make it rise. Like, like in my recipe, I put it in the water and let it kind of soften, and it kind of rises supposedly. And I don't know. I just keep it the same way. I would be worried that my yeast is not going to activate in the water with my salt and my water. So I think the step of adding the water, even if it's instant yeast, needs to be completed, right? So anyways, that's just information. But so I'm going to knead this a little bit just to make it more smooth. And then I have it's approximately so these, like a pound, I want to say 16-ounce loaves. And so it makes a pretty good one. This one's a little bit smaller, but I can feel by the way I weigh it, so you can tell too. So, I mean, you could just cut it and do this if you want it pretty close. So, but you get the feel of about a pound. All right, so this bag is so small. All right, so then you have about 4 portions. I find I like the bigger loaves. So I do 4. I used to do 5 loaves, but I did 4. Do 4 regularly because I like the bigger loaves. Okay, and I have these ugly pans, but oh my gosh, I got these and I have never been able to find pans exactly these dimensions. It's really deep, and it's so cheap. But look, I found this, but look, it's not as deep as this one, and it's a little bit more narrow. Look at that. So even that, I could not find I'm going to call it my college days bread, even though it's ugly and gross. It still works, and I love, love, love it. So I used to have a few of them, and I've disappeared. And anyway, so what you do is you take this, and some people like to cut a piece of parchment paper on the bottom, but I just like to spray it on the sides and on the bottom. So the sticky part usually to me hasn't been the bottom, but on the side right here, and I'll show you how we get it out. So you just spray, and like that, put that on the side. This one, even though it's non-stick, I find I still need to spray it just in case. So I just do a little like that on the bottom and the corners. And if it comes out a little sticky, it's fine. It'll work out. I'll show you. Okay, I'll move this over here. All right, so that's that. And then you just take it doesn't even have to be pretty. Look at that. Okay, then you put a little flour on your rolling pin. This step is crucial because if you can see, look up closely, see this little bubble? Have you ever gotten bread, like bought bread, and it has a little hole in the middle, like you just cutting it, well, it's fine, But it has a little hole. It's because this step was not done. They just use a machine and they don't go through this step. So that's another thing. So sometimes I do try to skip this step, but I come back to it because it's just not worth it because you have these big holes in your bread. So technically, if you want it to look more smooth, I would roll the other side and find the smoothest side. Again, it's not that big a deal because once it rises, it'll smooth it out more. And then I just kind of like tightly roll it try to not get the bubbles out. Okay, try to get the bubbles out. And then I just pinch it. Again, like, look at me. I'm not even I'm exact or precise about it. Because you have to pinch the ends, the seams, because you don't want it to like lift up, So you just do that. And then just kind of like tuck it in a little bit at the ends and just play with it and shape it a little bit and just kind of make it as even as you can. You know how you get that loaf look? You'll still get that loaf look, but it'll help decrease that. This is kind of a smaller loaf, so I'm going to put it in a smaller pan. And put the seam side down. So you see it tucks in like that, and you can go like that too. So that's one. And then I'll do another one. Now, if it's still sticky, you can just put some flour in your hand and on the rolling pin. And at this point, there you go. Can you hear that bubble? So you just squeeze that from the middle out. Just do which way, and you want to make it approximately like a rectangle. And put some muscle into that, kind of lean into it and just squeeze out that bubble. There. So I mostly do from inside out. So this is the smooth side for me. So I turn it over, and I'm gonna roll it out a little bit more here because it wasn't quite even. Okay, so then, okay, now I'm gonna do this again. Okay, I want it kind of smooth to make it look pretty. When I'm in a hurry though, I've done this a million times. I can't even count how many times I've made this bread recipe, and I don't even care that much about it. So I just squeeze, again, you just go like this. Okay, pinch it. Make sure you pinch on the edges right there. Oh, pinch it pretty hard because you don't want it to pop out like that, right? And if it does, oh well. But and you just shape it, like I said, kind of squeeze this. This is a fatter part because I didn't roll it very evenly. Okay, and I'm going to put this in the bigger pan. It seems a little bit bigger. Okay, just tuck it in there. And again, I see this fatter part. It'll be a lopsided lid. It's fine. It'll taste so good. All right, and then this one, I'm going to do one more time for you. Well, I'll just do them all. So watch out, watch so you can get good practice. So I'm just going around, kind of outside, inside out, squeezing the bubbles out. And just roll it in, seal it, tuck it. Okay, so like that. Put that in this one. I didn't get that in right there. Put that in. One more. See, the reason why I don't want to pause is because I need to tell you something else, but I want to get the timing of letting it rise. You know what I mean? So just do it. So you have all the loaves ready together. One more. Okay, so that one looks smoother, so I'm just going to turn it over, roll it tightly, tuck the seams in. I've seen bread machines where they make it look so easy, right? But this is the fun part, so don't skip that part. Okay, so I'm going to just tuck that one in. Okay, so that's it, and so you just let it rise at room temperature, and oh my gosh, talk about ovens. If you have a proofing oven, which I'm going to be getting, I'm so excited, I think. So I got a Bosch, and long story short, they do not service their product. During the warranty, I had it within the year. Sorry, Bosch, but I'm going to have to tell the truth to the audiences. So don't get a Bosch unless it's free. Okay, so you let it rise, and look, I'm going to show you. Look, this is the risen, at least to double. So now this is ready to stick in the oven. So I'm going to stick these in the oven, and when we come back, we're going to have fresh bread. I can't wait. Okay, so come back. All right, welcome back. I'm starting to take out this yummy bread. I'm going to get 2 more loaves out. Oh, you guys, look at that. I wish you could smell this. And then one more. All right, look at that. Even with the imperfections, it just bakes it out, and we're gonna cut into it anyways. So when you take it out, I don't know if you can hear that, it's a little bit hollow, that's done. And sometimes you wonder, is this too overcooked? No, because it'll soften. And what I like to do, I like to take a stick of butter when it first comes out of the oven, and I like to just take it and brush the top with the butter, just a little bit like that, on all my loaves. Just add a little extra flavor right there. Doesn't have to be a lot, just to cover it. And then, really you should let the bread sit in your pan for about 5 minutes-ish. But for the sake of what I want to do, I'm not going to wait. Hot bread is amazing. So see, I put enough. This is going to come out beautifully. And when I run my knife through, I don't feel anything. And I like to have a rack to let it cool, like right there, so that it doesn't get wet. Like if you leave in the pan too long and let it cool like that, it'll get wet on the bottom because the steam there's no way for it to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take my loaves out since they're not sticking, and it's awesome. And it's a little bit, so the loaves are really, really hot. Oh my goodness, you guys. Ah. Okay, I'm gonna take this one out so you see how many loaves I have. I'm gonna take my mitt. So if you can find a big pan, see this one is a little, I can feel it. When I couldn't lift it out right away, I run my knife through the side. Like that. See how amazing my pans are. Priceless. Can't replace it. Oh, you guys, I'm so excited. Okay, which loaf should we pick? This one's a little deformed, but it's still good. I'm gonna pick that one. My favorite part is the end piece. Okay, watch me cut. Now, okay, cutting, you've got to have a serrated bread knife, or you're gonna just butcher your bread, okay? So make sure you have a serrated, especially when it's hot. So make sure your bread knife is thin and it has serration there, so that's a bread knife. So I'm just gonna cut me a chunk. So you saw it, don't just go boom, kind of saw it, especially when it's hot. Oh my goodness, can you see the steam on that bread? Oh, this is my favorite part. So here, this is where I'm making bread. My kids are in the basement watching TV with their friends, and I'll say, kids, hot bread, and they'll run up here, or I just serve them, you know how I am. Okay, so let's put some butter on it. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is one of my favorite parts. I haven't made bread in a long time, but my daughter Lindsay, Mom, I need to learn how to make bread. She's getting married to Mr. Spencer Maddock. Give her a shout out. So excited and so happy for her. So now that I have this on my show, I always say, okay, I'm going to do all the recipes that you guys want so you can just come on my show. And we'll go to the show, look for the recipe. It's on the show. Go get the recipe there. Okay, so I have honey and I have raspberry jam. Oh, I don't know which one to do. I'm going to do jam today. But this honey is amazing. Or maybe I can do half. Why not? So I'm just going to take a little honey on the corner. Oh my gosh, this honey, my husband got it for at work. I can't remember, some kind of micro farm. I'm put a little bit on the corner, but I mostly really want this jam, and I didn't grab a spoon. So I'm going to put some jam on my bread. Or sometimes some people like just butter and bread. Hot bread is amazing. So this is my favorite part, the end piece. I know you're jealous. Well, you're just going to have to go make it. Okay. You know how to make it. Go make it. Cannot wait for you to make this delicious bread all by yourself for your family. Happy baking. Until next time.